So tonight we have, of course, a special guest. Now, Avi Lipkin's been with us before, and he's going to come up and talk to us about Israel and whatever he feels like he needs to talk to us about. Come on up, Avi. Take my pulpit, please.
Yes, thank you. Special honor. Okay, shalom, y'all. Great to be here again. They always say better than being invited is to be invited back. So I'm so happy to be here. And I was very, very emotional about seeing, I love the music. I don't want to say I almost cry, but I feel I'm in Israel, and I see the kids and the grown-ups dancing, and definitely you're not Baptist. Anyway, okay. I have this way of letting loose this, these silly remarks, but I have a very serious message tonight. And what I wanted to say is that we are living in the most emotional time in the last 2,000, maybe 3,000 years. We are the generation that is seeing more fulfillment of Bible prophecy in just the last few years than all these thousands of years. All of a sudden, things are all coming true because they are mentioned in the Bible. God says these things. And even, I hope, Pastor, you don't put my son's lecture up behind me again, but my son is very active with Mount Ebal, which proves the veracity of the Bible. Many people say, Jews and Christians, oh, this is all fables and nothing serious. And so my son was with Professor Adam Zaltal, and they found the altar of Joshua. And they found the biblical proofs from Egypt, because these people had left Egypt. And so I'm extremely proud of my son, because he is part of this movement to prove that the Bible is true. This is so important for Christians and Jews. And I hope God guides me tonight with my message, because my message is for Jews and Christians together. And I know there are a lot of Jews and there are a lot of Christians that don't like when I say Jews and Christians are one family. We are one family. And you know what? We're like an Italian at dinner. All the brothers and sisters are fighting and yelling, and all of a sudden the father says, okay, enough, time to eat. And the Jews and Christians were fighting. This is a family thing? Okay. I'm going to give a little bit of a personal testimony, which is not biblical, but it's going to come, the Bible will come in. I was born in 1949, and when I was 6 years old, I went crazy. There was a TV presentation called Victory at Sea. How many people remember the music of Victory at Sea and Richard Rodgers? And but one of the things that frustrated me when I always loved history. And I said, I miss World War II because I watched Victory at Sea and all those battles, and I wasn't there. 1948, 1949, Israel's independence war, I wasn't there. 56 Sinai campaign, Korean War, I wasn't there. And I grew up in New York until age 19, and I felt that I had missed my role in history. You remember Patton, General Patton? He says to Eisenhower, I have to be in that battle. It's my destiny. And I was feeling about Israel. I moved to Israel in 1968. I was 19. And I felt like I missed my destiny. Forgive me, this is not a biblical message. It's kind of an arrogant, personal message. And I served in the Israeli army 30 years in reserve capacity, 16 years in artillery and army spokesman. And I was a witness. I'm 76. I was a witness when I moved to Israel that Israel was 3 million people, 3 million Jews. And this went on for many, many years. People would come to live in Israel, people would leave Israel, and we always were stagnating at 3 million. When I did move to Israel in 68, there was a great debate in the university where the left was saying, in 20 years, the Arabs will be the majority because they have more children. And did that happen? 1988, they didn't become the majority because 1.5 million, 2 million Jews and Christians moved to Israel from Russia or from Russian-speaking republics. So in 1999, it was 5 million Jews and Christians. Today, it's 7.5 to 8 million Jews and Christians in Israel. But there's still people who are saying, oh, the Palestinians are going to outnumber us. And what I see happening is there are Jews coming from so many countries. 150,000 Jews came from Ethiopia. There are Jews now coming to Israel from many countries. So Israel's population today is 10 million. 2 million Arabs, but 8 million Jews and Christians. So this sounds like very mundane, not really very interesting. I live in Judea. Aaron lives in Benjamin. My other son, who's coming to visit on Tuesday, he's in Samaria. 500,000 Jews are living in Judea and Samaria. 500,000. And as we progress in the message this evening, you're going to see 10 million immigrants going to Israel. How many Jews are there outside of Israel? 6 million, maybe 8 million. There's going to be a lot of Christians coming to Israel. You know, we hate the Christians till we marry them. There are 6 million Jews and 4 million Christian spouses. And America, God forbid, is before a civil war. We're going to get to that. I'm not there yet, but I'm just saying, just imagine Israel's population doubling itself to 20 million very soon. Okay. What I want to do now, it'll sound a little strange. I studied Sovietology in the university, Russian studies, communism. Israel was founded, not in 1948. Israel was really founded in 1920. And the people who controlled it from 1920 were communists and socialists from Russia and Poland. And people like me, who were nationalists, we were out. When I was fired from the Prime Minister's office in 1990, they said, we know your views, you're fired. And we're going to put lies in your file, and you will never, ever have again a job in Israel. And you know what? They were right. Who took me in? The Christians, the Messianics. Now, I'm not Messianic, but I do believe in Messiantics. And I love the Messianics, all of them. And I love the Christians, all of them. Because I'm Jewish, I don't have any right to say, well, this Christian is better and that Christian is less, or this Messianic. And, you know, my favorite joke is, you know, what's the difference between Southern Baptists and Northern Baptists? Does anyone know? Northern Baptists go to hell. That's a Texas joke. I'm going to Texas. I tell that joke everywhere I go. I love Southern Baptists, and I love Northern Baptists, and I love everybody. And I have a long testimony about how I used to hate Germans. And I went through a process. And you know what? Jesus broke the chains of hatred that were crushing me. First, I met Germans in New Braunfels, San Antonio, in the military. Blonde, blue-eyed, they looked like Nazi soldiers. But when the preacher was preaching, everyone was crying tears for Israel. I said, you know what? These Christian Germans, they love Israel. So I love them. So the Germans of New Braunfels, Texas, they're kosher. Then I went to Switzerland, and I didn't want to go to Switzerland because of the Holocaust and everything that happened. But I didn't go to Germany. I didn't go to Austria. I went to Switzerland. And I spoke on the 100th anniversary of Theodor Herzl speaking in that famous auditorium. And I heard the other speakers, and we were all on the plane coming to Switzerland that day, and we were all following the news. So when I heard the German language speaking, and they were talking about what was in the news, I understood everything they said because we had been hearing this in the news in Hebrew and in English, so I already knew what the subject was. And all these Swiss people were crying. I said, you know what? I love these Swiss Germans. They're kosher also. And then at the reception, I said, what part of Switzerland are you from? They said, Nein, Deutschland. Nein, Österreich. They were Austrians and Germans. I said, what? Are you telling me that there are good Germans and good Austrians? Yes. This was a process, getting over the hatred of the Germans. And then, I think you all remember there's this magazine, Israel Today magazine, and I was a founder of it, and I wrote a Messianic magazine. I wrote for the magazine 20 years. And Ludwig Schneider, who was the founder of Nachrichten aus Israel, said, Avi, your book has to come out in German. And my first book came out in German. And he said, you have to do it in Germany. I said, but I don't like Germany. I don't want to go to Germany. So Friedrich Hensler, who was the founder of the Hensler Verlag publishing company, Christian company, was 16 years old, and the German army mobilized him to go to kill the Jews. And he put him on a firing squad. A 16-year-old German kid, Christian. And when he saw the naked women and children, and they were about to shoot them, he looks up to the sky and said, Jesus Christ, if you are really there, please don't let me kill the Jews. I said, this guy's going to do my book. And my grandfather even told me that in World War I, the Germans were good to the Jews in Poland. The enemy was the Russians. And so all of a sudden, I'm being shaken. And the chains of hatred against the Christians is being broken. Why am I telling you this? Because in Israel, we hate the Christians. It's a tragedy. And Israelis and Jews, they don't ever read the New Testament. They don't go to churches. If you don't go to churches and you don't read the New Testament, you can never overcome the hatred of 2,000 years. And Israel cannot survive without the Christians being with us. And I founded the Judeo-Christian Bible Bloc Party. I don't know, it's very frustrating because Christians in Israel, you have Ethiopian Christians, Russian Christians, Ukrainian Christians, Arab Christians, Western Christians. And everyone, I don't want to say they hate each other, but everyone thinks, oh, well, we don't want those, Christians. I say, I'm a Jew. I'm going to have all the Christians. I'm going to have all the Messianics marching together. Because very soon there are going to be millions of Christians moving to Israel together with their Jewish families. And we're going to reach 20 million. And there are tens of millions of Christians who are of Jewish blood from Spain, Portugal. They're going to come one day. And our borders are going to expand from the Nile to the Euphrates. Now, I want to tell you something. I got a 3-year jail sentence in Switzerland in 2009 because I said that Allah is not God. Allah is not the God of the Jews and the Christians. But when I say to the rabbis, read the New Testament because it says 7 times the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob in the New Testament. God forbid we won't read the New Testament. God forbid we won't step into church. And if you don't step into church on a Sunday, you're not going to know how these people love us. So they say to me, hey, we have enough trouble going to synagogue on Shabbat. You want us to go to church on Sunday? President Trump, for whom I voted 3 times, and I love President Trump. He's a little crazy, but I'm crazier than he is. So identify with him. And we're both from New York, from the same district, the same area. I'm a little younger than he is. Gets up, and he says the only solution for Gaza is to send the Gazans somewhere else. He doesn't say kill them. I don't say kill them. I want you to know I love the Arabs. I really do. Hey, listen, if I don't hate the Germans anymore, I don't hate anybody anymore. And I love the Arabs. But if their God, Allah, says kill the Jews on Saturday and kill the Christians on Sunday, they must not be in Gaza. They have to live in some place where they will be comfortable in an Islamic country and let them do whatever they want there. If they don't want to live in peace with us, they can go live in peace somewhere else. And I don't hate them. I'm just saying, otherwise our children and our grandchildren and our great-grandchildren will be constantly at war in Gaza. This has to stop. And President Trump said it. But President Trump has another problem, and that is that Biden left him a country on the precipice of financial collapse. Today I was watching the news, and Trump said we got $5.1 trillion from this trip that he made to the Middle East. I'm not saying bad things, because in Israel a lot of people are saying, oh, he's bought out. It's not a question of bought out. America has to be number one. And if President Biden brought America to its knees financially, Trump has a tough job uphill to save America. And he loves the Jews. I have to tell you, I have my best friend from childhood days. He worked with his mom and dad as subcontractors for Fred Trump, for the father. And Fred Trump was a very righteous German who took care of the Jews at the end of World War II. Trump is a great man. He did great things. But the point I'm saying is, when he says we have to transfer these people out and turn Gaza into a Riviera or a Singapore, Gaza's fantastic. It's just the human element. If it's there just to kill the Jews and then kill the Christians, they cannot be there. And if you read the Bible, when I was a young kid and I read the Bible and it said, wipe out Amalek and all his those who inherit him, the women and children and animals, I said, that's a horrible thing the Bible is saying. But after what we saw in Gaza, and after what we see in Judea and Samaria, and after what we see in Syria, what the Muslims do to the Muslims, and Lebanon, Allah is the devil. Allah is Satan. And Islam is not a religion, but a criminal psychosis. And when the Muslims pray, forgive me for doing this in the house of God, and they say, Allahu Akbar, and the media says God is great. Isn't that wonderful? But that's not what it means. Allahu Akbar means Allah is greater than God. Because our God is the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And Allah is the moon god, the war god, and the sword god who's going to kill all those who don't convert. And then those who become Muslims, they kill them too. So Allah is greater cannot be true until every human being on the earth is killed. Because we're in the image of God. As long as image of God people are on the earth, Allah is not greater. They kill the Jews on Saturday, they kill the Christians on Sunday, they kill the Hindus, they kill the Buddhists, they kill the blacks, they kill each other. Sunnis kill Sunnis, Shiites kill Shiites, Sunnis and Shiites kill each other. What's going on here? This is crazy. and I get a 3-year jail sentence in Switzerland for saying it. But if Trump says it, that's okay. Many times, a person feels frustration that his or her message is not being received. But when President Trump said what he said about Gaza, I was vindicated. But if I had been saying this before he said it, I'd go to jail in Israel because we're trying to make peace with these people. So, as I said before, I studied Sovietology, Russian studies. Israel was founded by communists and socialists. And from 1920, there is no room in Israel for right-wing or religious conservative people. Our judicial system is rigged. You cannot bring in a right-wing or conservative judge in the Supreme Court in Israel. I don't know if you know, but there were demonstrations in Israel yesterday and today because there is an attorney general that has to be fired. You know, many people who really kind of know what's going on, they say, well, why doesn't Netanyahu do this and why doesn't Netanyahu do that? Why is Netanyahu frozen? The reason he's frozen is because the Israeli Air Force very carefully selects its pilots. And they're all socialists and communists. And if Netanyahu does something that makes them unhappy, they fill out a letter, say, we resign from the Air Force. There's no Air Force. Israel without its Air Force cannot defend itself. So the Air Force has to be purged. The courts have to be purged. There are so many different groups, the Foreign Service, all controlled by the left. And Avi Lipkin has to be 35 years, like Joseph, going to Egypt. I had to be coming to America to preach in the churches, because in Israel I can't get a job. There's only one job that I can get in Israel, and that's to be elected to the Knesset at the head of the Judeo-Christian Party. And this is going to happen at some stage. I don't know how long I'm going to live, but I think God almost took me so many times, and God is saying, no, you have a job to do. I'm not finished with you yet. So what I want to do now is talk a little bit about communism. All of this is going to wrap up together. After the Napoleonic era, we saw in Europe something called nationalism. The French were nationalists, the Germans were nationalists, all these different peoples were nationalists. And the nationalism in these European countries was connected to the church, connected to Christianity. What they all had in common was they hated the Jews. Remember Dreyfus in France? And so Jewish people who came to America, I'm going to focus now on American Jews. The Jews who came to America knew that the nationalists were bad people in Europe. And they projected this onto Republicans here in America. That's why Jews always vote Democrat, because they have in their mind things which were traditions in Europe, in Russia, Poland, Germany, other countries. But the Christianity of America is exceptional. The Protestant Christianity is exceptional. And it's what made America the greatest country on earth. America has its errors, but America never killed one Jew. But the Jews in America don't have an idea what is Christianity. They're ignorant. If Jews don't go to church, they will never know what is Christianity and who are these Christians. It's not the same Christianity as Europe. So Jews constantly vote Democrat. The percentage has improved a little. It's like, I think, 33% now vote Republican. I'm sorry to be talking about politics. But the right-wing nationalist Republicans in America are beginning to get fed up with the Jews. Because no matter what America does for Israel, the Jewish people still hate Trump. So I have to tell you, I was here in the Villages 3 years ago. I think it was my last trip before the war. And I had lunch with a neo-Nazi. I didn't know he was a neo-Nazi. I just knew he was a militiaman. And it was a very nice talk. He was very intelligent. We had a very nice lunch. And then he said to me, "What do you think about the killing of George Floyd?" And I said, "Well, George Floyd was a high on drugs, and I think personally he died from the drugs. He should have been in a hospital or in jail. I don't know, but they shouldn't be with the policeman sticking his knee on his. He died quickly." He looked at me like this. Then he said, "What do you think about defund the police?" I said, "Well, defund the police is going to lead to murders and chaos and revolution in America." He said, "No." He said, "We were 3 million before George Floyd. After they killed George Floyd, we are 30 million. 30 million militia members. Because if there's no police, you're going to have militia." And he said, "First thing we're going to do is we're going to kill all the Jews." Here in America. Because the Jews are communists, because of the tradition of Russia. There's this knee-jerk reaction. You say Trump, they go nuts. You say Republican, they go nuts. My parents always voted Democrat. But during the time of Kennedy and there was Vance, there were some very, very good Democrats. And I voted Trump 3 times because America had to be saved from falling over the precipice. And I know when I was here, I've spoken about Canada and about the Muslim takeover of Canada, and that they're going to kill all the Jews in Canada. They're going to kill all the Jews in America. And I go trying to speak to the synagogues. Do you think there's any synagogue that wants to hear what I'm saying? Because the synagogues are like social clubs. I love going to synagogue on Shabbat. I love the prayers. I love the cantorial, the singing, the reading of the Torah. There's something very special about synagogue on Shabbat. Then after that, they have the meal. You know what cholent is? Cholent is like a stew. Meat and potatoes and a very nice stew. And you know, we Jews, you know, we're a little crazy. We don't drive on Shabbat. Well, if you don't drive, there's lots of booze on the table. And so we eat, we drink, we slap each other on the back, we're laughing, telling jokes. It's the one day of the week that everybody gets together. It's a social event. And you think Avi Lipkin is going to be allowed to come into the synagogue and say there's going to be a Holocaust, get your suitcases and get out of America? The Muslims in Canada have a plan. They are cataloging all the Jews to kill them. And they have a plan to kill all the Christians who marry the Jews. And all the pastors who are pro-Israel, they have to be killed, and the community has to be killed. And how are the Muslims becoming so numerous? They were only 100,000 in 1970, and today there are 30 million Muslims in America. And why? Very simple. Bribery of the universities. I've written this in my books, on my table. Listen, all my books, I started writing them in 1997. And I'm talking and talking and talking exactly about the Islamic plan. My wife is Egyptian. And she says to me, 35 years ago when she worked in the radio, the Saudis were saying, even if it takes us 150 years, we're going to make America a Muslim country. Then 30 years later, they said, we were wrong. It's not going to take 30 years. It's going to 150 years. It's going to take 30 years. America will be Muslim. They bribe the universities, and the kids come out crazy from the universities. They bribe the media. They bribe the politicians. I don't want to say that if President Trump gets a Boeing 747 from Qatar, if he's bribed or not, it's all part of the same package. He got $5.1 trillion for the American economy when the debt of America was $35 trillion. America was on the verge of collapse. America still is on the verge of collapse. And God forbid, I don't want anything bad to happen to America, because there is no country in the world that can replace America. So the Muslims want to kill all the Jews. The Nazis want to kill all the Jews. Then there's a group of black people. Black people are fantastic, but the Louis Farrakhan variety, they get their money in their arms, military training from the white Muslims. You know why the Jews have to die? Because Jews support abortion. Jews are liberal. And which babies are the ones who get aborted? The black babies. So there's an anger in the black community against the Jews because we are the abortionists. Horrible, but true. So there are a whole bunch of groups. Then there's something called Antifa. I don't even know what this is. Antifa is just anarchists, but they kill Christians, they kill Jews. The one thing that the four groups have in common is kill the Jews. Kill the Jews and kill the Christians. I wrote a letter to the president of Israel, Yitzhak Herzog. I wrote him a few letters. He didn't respond. And I said to him, listen, you're going to be president of Israel, at least you should say thank you. So he wrote me a one-word letter, thank you. Then a few weeks later, I was about to get on the plane to come back to America, and there was an announcement I heard only once, that Israel is preparing an emergency program for the absorption of 500,000 American Jews. 500,000. I'm not talking about 500,000, I'm talking about 10 million. 6 million Jews and 4 million Christians. So I went to do a podcast with a very popular Israeli right-wing guy, not religious. And when I said there are going to be 6 million Jews and 4 million Christians coming to Israel, he turned the podcast off. Because he didn't want to hear Christians. Nobody wants to hear Christians. So then what happens? The Soviet socialist mentality of our commanders for the last 100 years, Gaza will never attack us. Do you remember the Yom Kippur War 50 years ago? Egypt and Syria will never attack us. The same stupid way of thinking, the concept, concepcia, the concept. And I'm going to say something very tough, because the head of our Secret Service knew. The generals knew. And nobody said anything. They didn't tell Netanyahu. They said everything is okay. No problem with Gaza. There are people, remember my words. I don't know if and when I'll be back. I hope I am invited back. There is going to be a whole lot of treason trials in Israel with top generals who are all getting money from Qatar. Because the corruption is not just in America, the corruption is even in Israel. At least they should have told the thousands of kids who were dancing at the Nova party on the Gaza border, just get out, go home, cancel the party. We could not show that we knew. We lost 864 soldiers since then. 1,200 kids, 864 soldiers. This was a Holocaust in one day. Now I'm going to say something. If I haven't offended anyone yet, I'm going to offend some people now. I don't mean to offend. But God's prophecy is being fulfilled because of the Nova attack of Gaza. I've been in Israel over 56 years. I see what Gaza was. They were sending balloons, fire balloons, balloons that will land in our fields and burn up our crops. They were shooting at us. They were screaming. They're over a few hundred yards away from us. They're screaming all night so people wouldn't sleep on the Jewish side. And our Supreme Court said you can't touch them. The Supreme Court said don't shoot. You can't. Even if they're coming over the wall, you can't shoot. There are people in the Supreme Court who should be shot. There are generals who should be shot. They control. And Netanyahu, if he does anything, the Air Force goes on strike. We're supposed to be attacking Iran. It's not going to happen because the Air Force is controlled by the left. I'm living in my wife and I, we look at each other every day and say, this is a crazy country. Israel is a crazy country because the socialists are blocking the right-wing Likud and the religious parties who are altogether about 75% of the population. And these people are Soviet socialists that don't want to let go of the power. They fired me 35 years. Who took me in? The Egyptians. You guys, you're modern-day Egypt. Maybe God had a reason for me to be sent to the Christian world. We couldn't touch Gaza. What happened after the 7th of October? There's no more Gaza. We are grinding down their military capabilities. We couldn't do it before. But the attack on 7th of October was so outrageous that even many left-wing people are saying, we've got to finish the job, destroy Gaza. Or shall I say, destroy the leaders of the Hamas, get them out of the country, or kill them. You know, another thing, in Nazi-occupied Europe, there were thousands and thousands of Christians who took Jews into their homes and hid them. Many of these Christians were caught and killed by the Nazis. In Gaza, not one came and said, I know where they're hiding. I know where the Israeli hostages are hiding. The hatred is Amalek. And in case you didn't know, there's no difference between the Arabs of Gaza and the Arabs of Judea and Samaria. We need the immigration of Jews from America and Christian spouses. Amen. Anyone who wants to convert, you know what the rabbis say? Oh, we don't want you to convert. We don't want you. Those rabbis should be shot too. I have a whole list of people. I mean, half the country will be gone when I'm finished with them. I talk a little bit like Trump, you know. I'm not saying to force Christians to convert to Judaism, but I'm saying don't be hostile to those who want to convert. Those who want to remain Christian, God bless them. Because Christians are Jews. We're one family. A little bit on the Italian side. My father, rest in peace, he was really funny. He was Argentine, but Argentines by character are Italian. And so my sister and I were always fighting. And my father would say, Callate, callate is shut your mouth. Callate, sentate, sit down. Y come, and eat. That was the end of the fight. I mean, that's what we have to do. Jews and Christians have to sit down and eat. No Southern Baptists, no Northern Baptists. And I'm going to say something now, and I'm going to come back to it. We Jews don't know who the Messiah is. God, the Christians know. God bless you. We don't know. But we know that the Messiah is a Jew from Israel who speaks Hebrew, and he's coming not only for the Southern Baptists. He's coming for everyone. And everyone has to be there in Jerusalem. But the rabbi said, no, we don't want Christians. You know, there's a rabbi, I'm sure you heard of him, Chaim Richman. Special rabbi. He was part of the Temple Institute. And he quit. Because the new rabbis coming into the Temple Institute in Jerusalem said that the new temple in Israel will not be for the Christians. Christians won't be allowed. So we have also the phenomenon of Taliban rabbis, Taliban Judaism. You understand why I think we need more Christians coming into Israel? Judeo-Christian Western civilization and democracy. We don't have that in Israel. So, one prophecy, fulfillment of God, is that Gaza is being purified. It's not over, but I would say it's about 90% over. And then these crazy Hezbollah in Lebanon start firing missiles at us. Thousands and thousands of missiles, Hezbollah, in solidarity with Gaza. So we gave them a gift. Remember the beepers? I mean, that was a genius stroke. We prepared for this 10 years. So now the Christians, the Druze, and the Sunnis in Syria are saying, Israel, you haven't finished. We want you to come back and finish the job because Hezbollah is continuing to try to rearm all the time. They're all financed by Iran. Let me ask you a question. You don't have to answer. Do you think Israel's going to just sit back and let Iran get the bomb? I think Trump will be the good cop, and Netanyahu will be the bad cop. And then after Iran gets taken out, crazy Ayatollahs, the people of Iran, who I love, they will be free. I don't hate the Iranians. They're great people. We have a history of 3,500 years with Iran. A good history with the Iranians. And then Syria. Syria was the craziest, cruelest, most barbarian enemy that Israel had. Syria. And all of a sudden, Bashar al-Assad flees to Moscow, and Giuliani comes in, not the mayor of New York. His name is Ahmed Shara. And he's begging Israel to make peace with him, but of course on the condition that we totally withdraw from Syria so that the Sunnis can kill all the Druze. Now, I don't know if you know this or not, but the Druze are descended from Jethro. The Druze are really brothers. They serve in the Israeli army. But again, one of the miracles of God is the Druze originally had a rule. If you were Lebanese Druze, you're loyal to your faction in Lebanon, but you'd hate Israel. If you were Syrian Druze, you hated Israel. That was under the Ba'ath party of Bashar al-Assad and Hafiz al-Assad. But when Bashar al-Assad fled, the Syrian terrorists who are Sunnis, it's now our turn to come back. Bashar al-Assad killed 500,000 Sunnis. Bashar al-Assad expelled 10 million Syrians who were mostly Sunni. And the Druze were the top officers, or among the top officers of the Syrian army. So now they're coming for the Druze. There are Druze in the Golan Heights refused to get the blue Israeli ID. Now all the Druze in the Golan Heights have the blue ID. They don't want to hear the word Syria. And the Druze who are in Suwaida and in the Druze villages in the south of Syria, they want Israeli citizenship. So the Druze now, as a whole group, are coming over to Israel. I don't know if you heard, in Damascus, there is a neighborhood called Germana. Well, the city, the town, it's a neighborhood, is half Druze, half Christian. When Giuliani comes in with his terrorists, they kill the Christians too. The Druze, the Christians, the Shiites. Israel doesn't want to get involved. It's not our business. But the Druze are saying, you have to protect us. We protect them. I don't want to go into something which is, I'll just mention it briefly. There is a thought that there should be a road between the Druze section in the south of Syria and the Kurds. Remember the Kurds? They're on the other side of the Euphrates River. I predict there's going to be a Kurdish state sooner rather than later. It's going to take time because Israel is not ready for this yet. Israel's not ready to get involved in this. But the Kurds in the northeast, the Druze to the south, there's going to be a connection. And our borders will go from the Nile to the Euphrates. Not because we want it. We don't want it. You know what my worst enemy is? The Jewish mother. The Jewish mother wants her kids close to home for Shabbat. As they say in Florida, a golf cart's drive away. Jewish mothers do not want their kids to be in Egypt or in Syria or in Lebanon or in Saudi Arabia or in Yemen. You know, we haven't spoken about Yemen yet. I don't know if you know this, but Yemen is part of God's promise to the children of Israel. And the children of Israel are also the Christians. A lot of people hate me in Israel for this. Jews always complain, well, where were the Christians in World War II to defend the Jews? Today we have 100 million evangelical Christians who love Israel. 100 million. So what do? We spit in their face. We reject them. Are we crazy? I thought the Jews were supposed to be the smartest people in the world. Well, I have news for you. We are not. There's a lot of education that has to go on in Israel. Because the Orthodox Jews, the ultra-Orthodox, they don't like the Christians. I'm telling you, secular Jews hate the Christians. The Christians who love the Jews are the white Anglo-Saxon Protestants. Now, by the way, white Anglo-Saxon Protestant is black also. Hindu, Chinese, those who go to the evangelical churches. So just the WASPs. These are the people that the Jews have to get close to and learn from them. And yet, no. Remember Dracula? With the cross? Going like the Jews are like this with the Christians. This has to stop. This has to stop not because I am a Jew who is really a Christian. People say I'm really a Christian in Israel. I'm saying this because for Israel to survive, we have to have our troops. And the Christians are our troops also. I have to tell you, I'm going back a little. I know I'm rambling, but all of this is part of the same picture. In 1998, Bill Clinton was president. And he said to Netanyahu, give up the whole West Bank, Judea and Samaria, but you can still leave 30 of this nachaluyot, 30 of the settlements behind Arab lines, you can leave them. And Netanyahu wasn't having his arm twisted, he was having his arm broken off by Clinton. And so I came up with this idea. I don't know if you heard about it or you knew about it, because it was squelched. I was calling on Christian ex-military volunteers to come to Israel as volunteers. Now, if you're a Christian American, you cannot bear arms in Israel because it's a foreign war. You lose your citizenship. So I said to the Christians, no. You won't bear arms. You will march alongside a Jewish guard, and if the Jew takes a bullet, then you pick up the gun to defend yourself. And the Orthodox Jews said, we don't want them because they're going to be preaching Jesus all the time. Maybe they have some truth to it, but if we need thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of Christian military volunteers, that's the price we have to pay. And if Jews have an inferiority complex that they don't want to hear about Jesus, they got a problem. So I come to the States and I see all the time, I see things happening here where Jews are going to be slaughtered by Muslims, by Nazis, and by other groups. And it's going to set into motion a tsunami of massive immigration to Israel of Jews and Christians. I have to tell my black brother and sister a joke, which I know they're going to love. Are you ready for a joke? Can I tell one joke? This Jewish guy has 3 sons. And you know, we Jews, we're very cliquey. We want our boys to marry Jewish girls. So the son comes home, first son comes home, Daddy, I met the girl of my dreams. What's her name? O'Malley. So the father says, O'Malley? That's not a Jewish name. I don't care. I love her. She's the woman of my dreams. I'm going to marry her. Okay, you have my blessing. Go in peace to my son. Please, God, I have 2 more sons. Let them marry girls with Jewish names. Second son comes home. Daddy, I met the girl of my dreams. What's her name? Smith. Smith? That's not a Jewish name. I don't care. I love her. She's the woman of my dreams. Okay, like your brother, you have my blessing. Please, God, I have 1 son left. Let him marry a girl with a Jewish name. The third son comes home. I met the girl of my dreams. Okay, what's her name? Goldberg. Praise God. A woman with a Jewish name. What's her first name? Whoopi. You know, I'm going to say something else also, which is a little bit at variance with the Torah. Do you remember when the sister of Moses, what's her name again? Miriam. Senior moment. She gets leprosy because she spoke against the Cushite woman. What is Cushite? From Africa. And the rabbis say that's Sipporah. But Sipporah was not Cushite. Sipporah was the daughter of Jethro, who was descended from Abraham. The Cushites go back to Noah. So I say to the rabbis, no. I say that Moses had a Cushite wife. And if you want to know about it, because I'm not making it up, how many people here have Josephus in their libraries at home? Josephus, go to Wars with the Jews. And there's a story about Moses. I never say this in the churches, but this is a very good point. Egypt was overrun by African army. And all the Egyptian generals ran away. And Pharaoh didn't know what to do. Moses was the son of Pharaoh. He was adopted son. And he said to Pharaoh, give me your guard, your best soldiers. I'm going to go to Africa. I'm going to defeat that city, which is on the Nile. How many people know the story? One hand, 2, 3. So Moses goes into Africa, probably Sudan. And there's a whole story, a very interesting story about a type of a bird. I think it's called a secretary bird. And it snipes and kills poisonous snakes. There was an area, the city was surrounded on the one by crocodiles in the Nile, and on the other end there were these snakes. And Moses was starving these birds so that they'd be really hungry, and then sent them, and they took out all the snakes. Then the army of Moses came up to the city. And the daughter of the king saw Moses, and the story is that she fell in love with him, the African queen. And she went out to the secret exit from this. She went up to Moses, said, if you marry me, you get the city without a drop of blood. This is before Sipporah. So Moses' first wife was a black woman, was a African. And so when Miriam speaks bad about the African woman, it's not Sipporah. Sipporah is his second wife and a cousin. We have a family relationship with Jethro and with the Druze. There's so much history that people don't know. And we have a relationship with Africa. We have a relationship. You know, I'll tell you another thing. I'm sorry to ramble, but God is leading me in that direction. I have books about Greek authors who wrote about 300, 400 BC. And they say that, you remember when they were trotting in the mud to make the bricks in Egypt in slavery. And so people got leprosy. So what did Pharaoh do? He took them out, sent them to the desert into camps where they waited for them to die. When you read the Torah in the synagogue, you see two parashot, Mitzurah and the other one, senior moment. You have 2 weeks where they read about leprosy. Moses took all of these lepers, took them out of the camps, and took them with him to Mount Sinai. Slaves, not just Israelites. It's unbelievable. This is like 400 BC. Moses left Egypt with an army. Okay. I don't know. I try to be an historian sometimes and mix things in there. So Gaza is finished, virtually. Lebanon, they're going to make peace with Israel. You know, the Abraham Accords? But they say, Israel, just help us finish off this Hezbollah thing, because they're nuts. Even Giuliani Ashara, he says, we have a common enemy, which is the Shiites, which is silly because the Shiites are 15% of Islam and the Sunnis are 85%. The Shiites shouldn't be so stupid, and they should be working with Israel and not with Iran. God has reasons for everything that's happening. Same with Syria. Iran, I don't know what President Trump is going to do. I think President Trump will agree to Israel doing it and give us the armaments we need to do it. We'll be the bad cop. We'll do the job. The Houthis, a country of 40 million crazy people, blocking the Straits of Tiran. We have a history with the Straits of Tiran. It can't be tolerated. And something I'm not going to talk about tonight, which would give, I'd need another hour. Turkey and Egypt. Turkey and Egypt are getting ready for war with Israel. When Egypt attacks us, we're going to lose a lot of good people, but we're going to go to the Euphrates, from the Nile to the Euphrates. We don't want Egypt. We don't want Turkey. Is God asking us what we want? God has a plan, and it's delineated in the Bible. And the most important commandment for every Jew and every Christian, Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one, and you shall love thy fellow as thyself. The two main commandments. Are we doing it? No, we're too busy hating each other. And Christians hate Christians, and Jews hate Jews. We say in Yiddish, a mishugas. Just crazy behavior. And God is up there holding his head and saying, what am I going to do with these people? So I want to conclude by saying, I think that we are in the generation that has seen all these miracles taking place in the Middle East. Even California, which is suffering from a lack of water. Israel has the capabilities for desalination of water, and combining that with solar energy, there is no reason for there to be a lack of water. Not in the Negev desert, not in Saudi Arabia, and not in California. I think some people are lazy. They don't want to think. God gives us all the genius, all the capabilities to do what we have to do. And, you know, I have to tell you that I think, how many people heard about the laser? Israel has a laser weapon. And if Iran launches hundreds and hundreds or thousands of missiles, we're going to be zapping them with the laser all the time. I think each shot is like $40,000 of electrical current. $40,000, not $1 million per rocket. So I think Netanyahu is a genius. I think he is doing things sensibly. with patience. And what hurts me is the dead boys and girls in Israel. We have thousands of Israeli soldiers, boys and girls, lost their legs and lost their arms. Tragedy, tragedy, tragedy. And that's the price of the state of Israel. And I want to conclude by saying, the Messiah, I believe, will show up. First or second time is irrelevant to me. The Messiah will show on the Mount of Olives, and the Jews and the Christians will go arm in arm up to the Messiah and say, excuse me, is this your first visit to the Holy Land or your second visit? God bless everyone.